So, hello. I feel like I'm holding one of my online lessons. Hello to everyone in the room and those who are watching this as a recording. Um, we are one member, one host down. I'm Mark Parry. We're joined by with Stephen Colber, but Lottie is not 100%. So she decided to rest, and she'll join us next time. So maybe Lottie will be watching this recording, hopefully. So we'll just have to kind of see what we can piece together, Stephen, over the next hour. We have a total of one person in our audience, which is good, but we'll bounce a few ideas around. Got
Really?
anything to say, Stephen? To just
No, life's good. Life's going swimmingly at the moment, you know. Not been in a big reading mood myself though,
Oh,
but
okay.
getting things done. How about you?
Um, Yeah, I'm unexpectedly busy, which is
Oh,
kind of a bit weird. I know that's a bit of a cliche to say, "Oh, I'm so busy," but I've had a few freelance bits and pieces, and I'm doing some volunteering and other things of that nature, community groups. So it means I've kind of, got a lot of bits and pieces happening, which is good.
hmm,
And I'm
that's
doing a lot of reading. I'm doing more reading than ever. Um, which is handy because we are the Educators Book Club. There's our little flyer. This is the square one. So we casually talk about books we've been reading and the valuable ideas they offer. We love to get audience participation. We don't have a guest author this month, but sometimes we do. We kind of ask around. Sometimes people are interested. Sometimes, so we'll see what we can piece together. So I'm just going to stop sharing. Anything else we need to chat about, Stephen, before I go into? I'm just going to talk automatically about what I've been reading. But
no, all good. It's might be a short session today.
no, it won't. We're going to go for the full hour.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I might talk about my background. Because I've been doing quite a lot of work or bits and pieces of work at UTS, University of Technology, Sydney. This is one of their stock images that I recently had to use, or I found a little folder of stock images, and this is their wonderful library, a new building. It's only a couple of years old, and I don't know if there's a lot of physical books in the library, and the physical books they do have, they kind of are free to display them in this fabulous way. So, and then if I step aside, there's a student here.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, that's the UTS library on Broadway in Sydney.
Beautiful. I was at the State Library of Victoria just
Oh
this
yeah,
afternoon. Went to a seminar like a big grown up, and then went to the library like an even bigger grown up, and just thought, I need to spend more time in libraries. I don't know why I'm sitting in this. We all spend half our lives in a home office.
yep.
Hi, Alicia. Hi,
Hello,
Alicia.
Alicia. Have you got? I'm going to turn you on mute for momentarily. We'll unmute you later in the in the our event. Yep, we got the thumbs
So
up. Very good.
that's you're a professional online facilitator there, Mark.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
That used to be the thing. It'd be like, well, once we used to run some PDs, and it'd be like you'd have two people, one doing the talking and the other one doing that.
Yeah. No.
You'd let 100 people in, and you'd hear, yeah, right, you're right, and then,
Yep. Yep. I was talking to someone about that.
admit 100. You were talking to someone about?
Oh, about this sort of facilitation role and having an offsider and how much easier it makes it because the teacher's got to think about other things. Got to they've got to divide their attention, so it makes it heaps easier when you do that. I'm just laughing because you said you were being a grown up in the library. Like you know, well, you're free to grab a book at any stage and return to that library and read it.
Mm,
For enjoyment, maybe.
mm,
Okay,
yes,
we've got
exactly.
I'm gonna share my screen if that's all right. And I'm gonna
That's all right.
talk through what I've been reading. Oh, yeah,
And to prove you're a professional, you're not even going to say, "Can you see my screen?" Because you'll already know that we can, and you'll just continue
I
your
might
monologue
say,
without breaking
could
breaking.
people give me an indication if you can see my screen? Just a thumbs up, possibly? Up. Okay. Now, I this is a book that I have heard about. I listen to lots of podcasts and I read other books, and then this kept popping up. This book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, and I bought the audio book on a CD,
On a
CD
CD.
on a CD. That's
What?
right. I
Hmm.
bought it quite a while ago and I never listened to it. I put it in my drawer and then I forgot about it. And then I kept hearing about it because his ideas, it was written in 1985, I think. Does it say? Yeah. No, it was written in 1985, which was the year that I was a first year university student to become a science teacher. And so, but the ideas are relevant with the critique of social media. And there's, do you know that podcast called Your Undivided Attention? It's
No, can't say I
the
do.
people that made a really good documentary that was on Netflix, I understand, but it was about Facebook and they interviewed whistleblowers.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so they've
Okay.
extended that into a podcast called Your Undivided Attention. And they
Mm.
have lots of guests on, and they more and more whistleblowers. And in a recent episode, they had a discussion about this book. And I thought, oh, I better listen to it. So I made it my business over the last few weeks. I listened to it, and it was really quite interesting. Now, essentially, because it was written in the mid 80s, it's critiquing television. And so television wasn't a new technology then, but the premise or the main idea is that he talks about George Orwell, who wrote a 1984, and Aldous Huxley, who wrote, what was Aldous Huxley's book, Stephen? Or maybe look
Fahrenheit
in
451. Is
in
that
the
his?
chat. No, no, no. That's a good guess. No, no medal. Maybe someone in the chat can um, enlighten us. Anyway, um, these two ideas of dystopias, and so in the Aldous Huxley version, it's about not about pain, it's
Brave
about
New World.
Brave New World. We'll be
There you
surrounded by distraction, things that are pleasant, and there'll be so
go.
much of it, we won't be able to navigate and you know, we'll be amusing ourselves to death as such. And
Mm.
so, and it takes this whole kind of, it goes into this enormous amount of detail of print and the history of print, which is a
Mm.
bit odd. It was just, but it did set out down a foundation. And I even went into like Morse code when that
Mm.
technology came about. It shifted the kind of people's perception maybe that it was a commodity. Information was something that was coming in that you could expect and you could, or even pay for. It was
Mm.
something that you could trade. It was sort of like along the space time continuum without getting too tricky.
Mm.
So then and then it pivots at that point. It kind of shifts gear and it just goes into this full blown criticism of television, saying that this is terrible. People are really passive, they're not active. And then they go into, he goes into uh, even like shows like Sesame Street, which I was reading about the other day, because apparently Bluey is more kind of popular than Sesame Street. But it's this idea that people who watch television, which is all of us, are really passive and we're not really kind of active. Now, a lot of the ideas were actually they're horribly dated now because it's been 35 years or so since the book was published. However, it's had a resurgence or re-emergence because of social media and all the critique and all the kind of things that are not so good in that territory. So I'm just looking at I did write little notes here and there because it was sort of, I thought, oh, I'm just going to forget about it. I guess there's a really good bit about the TV news and how what is information and what's the purpose of news. And then in the medium of television, is it reliable or it's for entertainment, rather than the actual information. They had a couple of chapters on the phrase now this, because it's the
Mm.
fragmented. So I feel as though I'm starting to sound like a school teacher, but what do you think of all that I've just, offered up?
Well, my first the first reading of the title was that it sounded rude. We're amusing ourselves to death.
Oh, I
I
see what you
first thought it
mean. Yeah.
wasn't TV related, but okay.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting. So it's like, yeah, bit of a slice of life. It's always funny to read, the old, well, this is going to be the end of us, but it's out of whack. Like that was what was it? A lot of Freire.
Oh, yes. I
You
knew
know,
he'd come
he
up in
was
the conversation.
he was all about radio and how, I think it was his, or maybe I'm getting mixed up because I read a whole bunch of his and the other guy, his mate as well. But yeah, it was all about, well, you won't need a school now we've got a radio.
Mm.
Because and it was very much that kind of line of like, yours was the TV is coming and that's going to ruin our lives. But, they used to say the same about books and then books that were freely, not
Yeah.
freely available, but cheaply available, pulp novels, were corrupting the kids and comic
Yeah.
books were corrupting the kids. It's sort of, it's interesting, but, I don't know.
Um,
But having said that, I do also kind of be like, well, social media is a bit of a this time it's for real.
well, maybe
In a
it's
strange way that we laugh at that oh well books wouldn't ruin anyone's life, but then at the same time you look at social media and go, oh, but that might it might not be great. I don't know.
See, I guess I found a lot of it resonated strongly because like when they were talking about educational television shows, and they did give a few examples, there's no prerequisite. So anyone can just sit down and start watching. So
Mm,
that can be a good thing. But then in terms of learning and teaching, you generally have this idea of a prerequisite, that the
mm,
students are coming with something. Not the case with television. Also, there's no perplexity. There's no complication
mm,
because people will turn the channel. And it's like, oh, right, okay. So everything's kept at a really simple, manageable, digestible level. And
no
then
friction.
the no exposition. There's no, and I guess, see, I worked at a film and television school for a
Mm,
couple of years doing some learning design. And a lot of the understandings of what is television, I thought, oh well, yeah, it's so obvious. And then I
mm,
thought, oh, maybe that was sort of explains a lot actually. Like almost this funny little invisible tension that's at the heart of what's the purpose of teaching.
mm,
Because apparently, according to John Dewey, do you know
mm,
John Dewey?
mm.
Learning is more than content.
Really?
Mm-hmm. That's
Mm,
right. So I did enjoy listening to it. I would recommend it. It's a little bit nerdy, a little bit out of date, but I
mm,
really like the fact that it's kind of like really contemporary when you just sort of translate, oh, television, oh, social media. It's the same sort of thing, but then
mm,
as you say, maybe it's they're like a chicken little and the sky's falling. It's this overblown sort of thing. I don't know. But this is the
mm,
nature of dialogue and um which you don't get on television. I'm
mm.
gonna Do you want to speak, Alicia? Are you emerging as a as a speaker.
No, I've just put the kids to bed, so I am
Oh,
just emerging as somebody who has two kids in bed.
very good. These are the practicalities.
That was me earlier today. Like I was saying to Mark, it was like I went to a little seminar and then I was just enjoying being like, I can just walk around anywhere. I don't have to slowly be looking. Where's my little ducklings? Are my ducklings here? Are we?
Oh, isn't that the truth? Yes. So my apologies. I was in the middle of putting a child to bed, but I'm 100% here and thoroughly enjoying the convo, Mark. It
Oh,
sounds like
very
a
good.
great book. Really interesting.
Thank you.
I don't know if yeah,
Do-
probably
ha-
more read it.
hang on, Stephen, do I pin or add spotlight? I can never remember.
Add spotlight is
I'm
the
gonna,
one you do.
there's Alicia. But yeah,
Hey.
I guess it's different people. People read books for different reasons. I like reading books for that the reason that book was written, just to sort of like really kind of. Sorry, I didn't.
You lost me with that sentence. You read books because you like to read books like that. What?
I like books like that
Hmm.
because they're sort of like taking a contemporary issue and they're scrutinizing it, and then they're sort of like just commenting on it, or they're bringing in wild examples, and it's like, oh, and knowing that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's kind of, it will resonate with some audiences. And
Hmm.
then
I mean, I think your comment about, I read books like that, or that's why I read books like that is also quite interesting as well, Mark, because, that says, there's something in that why you read what you do and, how you choose, what you select, and what you actually pick up. But maybe that's not, tonight's conversation. Sorry, I'll go on mute. You continue on.
No, no,
But
that's
I
okay. You
thought,
keep going. Yeah, go
I thought it
on.
was a really interesting read.
yeah, everyone brings their own
Oh no, I mean, I think that's a
preferences.
really interesting, yeah, their own references. But I think the question of why we read and what we read and how we choose what we read is also really interesting.
Oh
So
yeah,
I'm always
totally.
I love hearing why you chose what you chose actually, because that's actually quite an interesting point. Not only what the book is about, but what made you, pick it up this time and listen to it
Yeah.
on a CD.
I like things even if they're forgotten in history.
Yeah.
I think, oh, this is now irrelevant. I want to read it and see what people 50 years ago, what all the fuss was about. And then you think, oh, is this tapping into like something that's still relevant for us, or really just chuck it away? It's not relevant. Or,
I mean, funny you should say that. I love finding. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come off mute, but I also love finding old books. Like a couple of years ago, like I went out to see like Hazel Edwards and found like old books off her bookshelf, and I've done it to quite a few older, sorry, authors and publishers as well, because I find it fascinating also what was potentially written 40, 50 years ago, and actually how little is actually really, needs to be updated of some of these books as well. And you think, God, they're still so relevant for today. And, especially some of this education stuff. And, we talk quite a lot about, sometimes education being cyclical. Some of this stuff, hasn't changed. So when I find like an education book or something like that on an interesting topic that was written like 20 or 30 years ago, it's fascinating. I mean, I look at it a little bit differently. All I think is, how much needs to be updated for a new edition. But it is a bit of that working out all of
mm.
that.
Yeah, see, with the that researcher, educational researcher Vygotsky is really interesting because he was
Yes.
active 100 more than 100 years ago, and
Hmm.
then it was sort of revived in the 70s, like more than 100 years ago, after he'd done the research, and then it didn't kind of, it hasn't kind of taken over the world, but I thought, wow, that's really interesting. It's kind of like lost in time, and you know, I guess that's the value of books, and it's written down, a little record, and then you can kind of, well, dust it off without being
Mm.
too romantic. But, and then it's the ideas, it sounds all poetic. It's the ideas within the books type thing.
Isn't it?
Alicia's frozen on the shock emoji.
or the scream or something.
Yeah. No, I love the vision of the ideas in the book, not the actual sometimes what's written.
Or like even I'm not big on fiction, but I know with say um, Emily Bronte, or how it's sort of like it's a little time capsule, and it
Mm.
still gets people going. And Julie says in the chat that she has read some Vygotsky, which is
Tell
good.
us more. Yes.
You can put stuff in the chat, Julie, or you can come up and chat with us.
It's like, well, no, her other comment says she doesn't want to come up and chat. But anyway, yeah,
Maybe
like
she'll be
I
listening.
think, but all of these theorists, Mark, become punishment for for teacher graduates. It's like you've got to learn. Year one, they hit you with all this Vygotsky pyramid of needs, proximal development,
Oh,
lots of
that's the
diagrams,
one.
lots of
Yeah,
this
you're
and lots
just
of
reading
that.
off the chat to sound smart.
Yeah.
Yes,
No, it's deeply embedded in my practice and
that's
my
the
no,
one.
like it's
See, we never
something they
really.
force you to do, and then and then it's hilarious because your student teachers will show up and say, "You guys been? What are your thoughts on Vygotsky?" And they look at you like, "What are you talking about? We haven't seen that since we were your age."
That's right. I like these sort of things because they're a little bit intangible and a little bit culturally informed, but then they're sort of like, well, they're kind of grounded in research. It's sort of like there's two things happening at the same time. And I
Mm.
like the fact that there's a diversity of opinion about whether or not they're valuable. And I think, oh yeah, bring it on. I'll get my popcorn.
Mm.
Oh, there. Thank you, Stephen. Yes, I think that's a good
It's
thing.
above my proximal zone of development sometimes.
Now, what
All
I
right,
did,
I'll do some
yeah,
talking. I
okay,
feel like
yes,
he's not here to soften me and Mark's boring intellectual rants.
correct.
But anyway, here
That's
we
why
are.
we like Lotties to kind of keep things well paced.
All right. Well, I did an Andrew Fuller. That's an Alicia classic. Did the audio book as
Where's
as
that on the
we
screen? Oh, there it is.
Oh,
Oh, yes.
wow.
did that one. That was real good and real peppy.
And what was it about? Guerrilla tactics for teachers, you mean?
Yeah. So it was I should probably do it properly and make it go all big on the screen. If I could work out how to do that. Yeah, it was real good because Andrew Fuller, that's a strange picture. It's not a very flattering picture. That's not his pic. Who's that? Anyway,
Oh,
that's definitely not
That's
Andrew
not
Fuller.
him. No.
He's got
He's got one
a
of those
very
names that gets picked up by other things. I'll fix that tomorrow.
no need. But I was just thinking he has one particular photo that he uses for everything. But yeah, it was real good because Andrew Fuller obviously not a teacher. And so it's kind of like here's how the brain works, here's how adolescent's brain works, and then therefore here's the teacher talk. And I thought that it'd be like two-thirds of the way through he'd lose me and I'd go, "Oh, come on, Andrew, you're not a teacher." But you can see it's a five-star review. But yeah, it hung in there. It convinced me all the way through. I was like, "Oh, that's actually, yeah,
so
that's
what
good." That
if
passes my
can
my very strongly developed teacher sniff test of,
can you give
but
us an
have you done it
example?
before?
What's a tangible example of one of these tactics that he
So
outlines?
would it be like, connection is the first thing that
Mm.
all teachers need to establish. So in your first lesson, you need to learn every kid's name and use it as many times as you can. The more times you're using a kid's name, the better. So it
Oh
kind of
yeah,
goes from your,
sounds good.
adolescent psychology. Here's the thing you need to know, and then here's how to do it. Or, kids exist in fight or flight, or, they can be easily ramped up. And one thing you can do in the class to bring them back down is, X, Y, Z. And I was like, yeah, okay. It was good. I liked it. Impressive. Short, sharp, quick, punchy. Lots of like, go look at the PDF and, here's a chart and things like that. Here's how to set up a seating plan and stuff like that, which again, a very teacherly thing. If you try and explain to a non-teacher, when the students come in, I put them in very strange combinations. They'd look at you a bit funny, like, why would you do that? But that's what we do. Viewfinder is in here for Lottie, because it's, it's kind of her
Do
style, but
you
I'll talk
are
about
you
that when
reading
Lottie's
for
here.
Lottie? You said your
Hey?
your driver to reading is you want to read.
No, no, I saw this. Well, it's a graphic novel with no words in it, and I sort of thought, oh, that's
Oh,
up Lottie's
sounds interesting.
alley. But I also thought I can't. She needs to help me find more because we have non-reading children in the sense that they're not literate yet due to being really young. Um, but I kind of was like, oh, getting an audiobook with no word. I mean, not an audiobook, a graphic novel with no words. They're narrating, oh, this is happening, and oh, he's not happy about that, and
And you can tell that,
good,
I guess,
right.
by the facial expressions and things like that in the pictures, or
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like, they're reading the story, but without any words being involved, and that kind of thing. Really good. Dusk was real good. Robbie Arnott is me and Jem's favorite authors. He's a Tassie author, and every book's, got a bit of platypus in it or a bit of something like that. They're all very kind of eco-friendly, sort of. And this one's all about a puma, I think. You know, Apparently there's a difference between a puma and a leopard. We looked it up and we can't remember the
yeah,
difference.
okay.
But it's one of those books where it's like it's timeless, placeless, a work of stunning beauty. You got to read it. It's good. I read it with my eyes, Mark. That's how good it is.
What does that mean? What do you mean?
Not me ears. I read it with my eyes. The
Oh,
old-fashioned
okay,
way.
okay, right. You always said the audio book is inferior.
No, no. I don't mind either way, but I happen to have this one. I finally read Babel, which I think
Hmm.
Grant Lewis said was good, and then two or three people said it was good, and each time I looked at the 24-hour audio book and went, Jesus. But
Is this
What
reading
did
with
you
your
think?
eyes?
no, it was amazing. So
Yeah.
this is the author who wrote, what is it?
Yellow face.
Yellow
Yellow
Face,
face.
which I found stomach turning and gross because it was like, she sort of
Well
leads you
written
down a
though.
path, and you're kind of like, yeah, I could do that. Go on, Elise. You talk too. You're the panel today. You're us.
I
You
know.
read.
Yeah, yeah.
She's such a good writer though, isn't she, Stephen?
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Like I mean, yes, yellow face you didn't like. I thought it was great.
Oh, it was well written, but I just found it like, ugh.
I know. However, this also fantastic. Like, my God, what an author she is. I went and saw her after she did Yellowface when she did a speaking event at for the Wheeler Centre, and she was so articulate, so interesting, and of course talking about her next book as well. But this is the stuff. Babel was a work of art for her. I think she's so proud of it as well, and she should be. What a piece! Like, it is a beast of a book.
Mm. It's like the thinking person's Harry Potter or something,
Yeah.
like it's kind of,
It is, and the
but,
storylines and like all of that. I don't, it's amazing how authors put these worlds together and these stories together, and yeah,
mm. Yeah, amazing. It's hard to capture the complexity and it
I'm
starts
so
off.
glad you enjoyed it though, because it is different.
Mm. It's kind of, it starts off, and then like what was it? Bree Lee's Who Gets to Be Smart? It was kind of that, but in book form, you kind of start off and we all the academics were sitting around sipping their tea and it was great. And then it starts to be, and then you just hear whispers, colonialism. You're like, what? What? Ah, no, don't worry about it. And then by the end it's like, buildings are blowing up and things are being turned upside down and transformed. Yeah, I just went and bought a hard copy for Jim, so that's how good it
Oh,
was.
good on you, good on you. She'll love
This
it.
is this is going to be a good one. Yeah, despite it being a brick. Oh, amazing. Mark, you got to read it. Get 25 hours of audiobook up here. It'll be good.
Okay, I'll make a note.
All right,
Something to
Elise,
do in your spare
your turn.
time.
You've got to read New Animal if you haven't already.
Ooh,
So, little bit like,
there's a
oh,
part I can't say on the screen. Sorry.
Yeah.
Alexander, New Animal. So, her other one was Woo Woo. which was like
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah. I know his book. I know
yeah,
who you're talking about now. Yes. Oh, I will.
it's kind of like, it's fairly raunchy, which is which yeah, it's basically like probably the best ending to a book I think I've ever read. But
Fascinating.
to get there, you have to go through 80% of a book that like, you know, is a bit full on and raunchy and everything. So Jem read it first and she said,
Hmm.
you have to read this. And like I kept every time she'd walk past, I'd like point at the book and be like, are you okay? Like, are you trying to tell me something? There's lots of risk-taking behavior, and you can see from the review, it's
But it got your
3.4.
heart racing, I guess.
I mean, did you read all fours in the end, Stephen? Like, is it in that vein or is
All
it?
fours, what's that? Did I?
Ask Jem about that one. She knows about that one.
All fours.
Yeah,
Oh, no, I
Miranda
think that's on our
July.
list.
Yeah, yeah, it would be on the list.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. No, no, I didn't get to that one.
Okay. I just didn't know if that was in the same vein, and that's why you keep telling
Yeah.
me about raunchy literature to read. But look, I'm writing
No,
this
no,
down
I
straight
would say
away.
it's similar vein,
Okay,
but
great.
yeah, it's kind of, and a little bit like,
There's a
um,
lot out there in this kind of vein at the moment. It's fascinating to read.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yes.
very Sally Rooney-esque as well. Kind of
Oh,
like, you got your main female character who's doing things that kind of make it's similar to Yellowface, I guess, too, in that respect. Doing things that you're kind of like, oh, I don't know if you can, don't know if that's the best thing you should be doing. Um,
is there an
yeah.
evil publishing assistant? Because there's a theme of evil publishing assistants going through books at the moment as well.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, you need to get a publishing assistant, and then your life will become much more raunchy, I guess.
not
But,
raunchy. God, I don't want that. Just evil. Um,
hmm.
yeah.
But yeah, so you got to trust me for 80% of the book, and then
Oh yeah, well, don't you worry. I'm
tell me
there.
if you
I'm
cry
there.
at the end or not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I should probably stop talking, shouldn't I?
No, no, no.
Because
Is Night
there's no
Picture
one
in the
to rein
list
me
there?
in. Um, Ernest is a person we know, and so read this one with great interest. It's very damning, basically. So Ernest is a they, them, and it's basically the story of uh, their parents' pyramid scheme. And so it's like, yeah, we read it. It was specially loaded because we're like, know people who know people who know the author. But it's like, oh, you just think if I was the parents, I would be very displeased with the depiction. But, that's the nature of fiction, isn't it? It's, not necessarily true. But
This Brave New World.
yeah, I finally got around to it. There you go. I read it and I couldn't even bloody name it off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
Really?
Yeah.
I was screaming at you.
Sorry,
Oh,
I think, yeah, someone was handing me a broken bus at that point, so I wasn't necessarily fully tuned in. Which fits. All right, and then this is my last one. I'll shut up now. Um, This is Hugh McKay, who apparently there's something called the McKay Report or something that's
oh yeah.
like,
I've read a few Hugh McKay books.
and this was, for me, a bit too much of the tell, like there's a lot of books I read are in this genre where it's like, let me tell you the way the world is. And then 50% of the time it's them telling you how you should be, It's like, did you know more and more people are living by themselves? And that's not good. We should all go back to church. It's like, oh, okay, well, didn't want to give me some time to think about my own thoughts on that, that little,
He's a social
anyway, I'll stop
demographer,
sharing.
I think, or
Yeah.
he's sort of it's
Hmm.
really consistent with his approach, and little pockets of intrigue.
Hmm.
But yeah, it does sounds like you didn't like it much.
I mean, it was okay. It could have been about half the length and still contained all the good things. It goes back to my endless request for an editor. Like if your book's called The Way We Are, well, I guess it is lessons from a lifetime of listening, but it's very much like, have you noticed this social trend? And you go, oh, that's a really good observation. And then before you have time to think of it, it's like, and to fix that problem, all we need to do is whatever I think.
All
And
right, like editorializing and that type of
hmm,
territory.
yeah, and and obviously because he's a little bit older, they're fairly conservative, sort of.
Yeah, I saw him
Straightforward.
speaking at my local library about more than 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And I
Mm,
was thinking, oh yeah, and there was heaps of people there, heaps of older people there, and it was
mm,
about something to do with religion or kind of that sort of territory. And then he was describing because a lot of his work is on like data, like statistical data. And
mm,
he was saying with such disdain about this category of spiritual but not religious. And it was like I felt a bit shocked that he was sort of he was so down on it. And I thought, oh well, it's just another category of, like when people started calling themselves Jedi Masters in the census, it was that type of discussion. But yeah, it
mm,
was really clear he had certain views on this spiritual but not religious kind of category. And I
mm.
thought, hang on, aren't you meant to be unbiased or, But
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. I didn't know
That's
that. I hadn't heard of this book.
That's a very good illustration of, yeah, it was quite complex and multifaceted things, People live alone, and then he's like, basically, and they're lonely losers, and they lack community, and they're going to probably commit suicide. And it's like, oh, okay. I don't know if you pulled that from the data. Yeah, and the same thing, like it's, there's more and more people identifying as different spiritualities, but religion is a really important thing, even if you don't believe it. And, it's like, okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. They got into grammar at one point, that kind of thing. Maybe touched on pronouns and stuff like that. Just sort of like, yeah, you've got the data, but you might have jumped into pronouncement a little bit too quick.
Hmm.
There's a couple of chapters where it was like, we need to get rid of a certain word or a certain phrase. And actually, you said it earlier, Mark. He rallied against the busyness epidemic, and he says we need to get rid of the word busy, and we shouldn't say to
Oh,
each other, first thing you say, how have you been? Real busy as a badge of honor. It's like, okay, well, I've read your book now, so I'm going to completely turn society around by doing whatever
Well,
ham-fisted idea you've got with.
I guess it's just why do people read certain books? Why do people write certain books? What's
Mm.
their what are they hoping to get out of the situation?
Mm. It was definitely got a sense of like they've been holding me back. They don't let me write this in my reports. I've just got to put data and pie charts and demographics. But now they've let me loose in this novel form. Well, not novel,
Now,
but,
I'm
long.
just gonna up there. I'm just reading in the chat. Catherine has said I'm reading "Careless People" by Sarah Wynne Williams. I'm just going to share my screen. I feel
Mm.
like I am in my online lesson. Here is Catherine's book. I have not heard of it. Stephen
Mm.
or Alicia,
no.
is this book known to you?
Is this one of
Certainly,
yours?
it's a very recent book, but Sarah Wynne Williams was on. I was just talking to somebody about it at work today, and they said, "Oh yeah, she was on 60 Minutes on the weekend or whenever 60 Minutes is on."
Mm.
So, and I heard about it on a podcast, and then was looking for a book to read and saw it and picked it up, and am very much enjoying it. Sarah Wynne Williams is from New Zealand, and she worked for the UN and well, she had an interesting childhood before that, so that part of the book at the very beginning is very interesting as well. And then she worked for the UN, then she worked as a diplomat for New Zealand at the New Zealand Embassy in the United States. But I'm not sure what year it was, maybe it says there in the blurb, but she saw the potential of Facebook
Mm,
as a global
there
power
it is.
and wanted to be part of it and saw a lot of potential for it to do a lot of good in the world. And anyway, and she kind of pitched herself to work there. People at Facebook didn't see what she saw, and took a while for her to convince them that they needed her, but she eventually worked for them. But anyway, this is like a whistleblowing
Ah, right,
book.
interesting.
Mm. And and Facebook have been trying to, you know,
Suppress.
litigate so that she can't do interviews for the book and things like that. But then she was on 60 Minutes, so she obviously is able to. But very interesting.
Yeah,
Mm.
interesting. I
Uh,
think I saw an ad. Is
yeah,
she the person that was on the just on Sunday night?
yeah,
Ah, yeah, I saw the
Mm.
ad and I thought, oh, what's going on there?
yeah. I heard
Yeah.
about it, as I said, on this podcast, and then just happened to, yeah, pick it up. And I haven't finished it, but I'm getting close and really, oh, wow. I don't know. I just had no idea how, well, I mean, obviously, I've only got her perspective on things, and I certainly don't have any other counter argument to suggest otherwise. But from what she says, Mark Zuckerberg has, or certainly had at this time, whether anything's changed or not, I don't know, but so little awareness of the world beyond the United States, and so little interest in finding out, and just did not see the potential or what power Facebook could wield. And so really wasn't, anyway, I don't know.
Ah,
Much things.
I mean, Julie says in the chat that she's been
Mm.
banned from speaking in the US,
US. Oh,
but
okay.
can
So she can
speak
speak
here,
here.
hence
Thank
the
you for
60-minute
clarifying. Yeah.
interview.
Mm,
Well, even I'm looking at the book, like, that blue square is obviously meant to be the Facebook logo, but
mm,
it's interesting. You would think, yeah, if lawyers weren't floating around, you'd call it, Facebook why it was crazy there or something. But
mm.
it's all very
Oh,
just,
there's
just
so
the
much
place
to
where
it.
I used to work. But if I
Mm,
put Facebook on the cover, surely that would sell better and, interesting. Yeah.
One to watch. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah, very interesting and very, kind of easy reading, but interesting.
Mhm.
Has it made you delete your Facebook account?
No, but it was interesting because on the 60 Minutes, I just went and watched the 60 Minutes interview tonight because I hadn't been aware that she'd been on it, and and she still has her own 60 Minutes, sorry, Facebook account as well.
Mm.
But I really want there's only one reason that I am still on Facebook, and once that reason is no longer necessary to me, I really hope that I will delete it because but it's not just Facebook. Earlier, Mark, when you were talking about TV, and then Stephen, you were mentioning about social media, and I thought, oh, maybe you were leading on to this. I actually thought maybe you were going to say that you were reading this book, but
Mm.
um, yeah. And then, of course, we've got the Netflix special Adolescence at the moment, which I haven't watched, so
Oh,
no
yeah.
spoilers, anyone. But
Oh, yeah,
um,
I've been reading about that.
Mm.
oh, it was awful what happened to her during or when she was on maternity leave. It was
Well, yeah,
horrendous.
this is what Julie, I'm just reading in the chat.
It was horrendous.
It's well, yeah, yeah, that's quite a
Oh,
workplace then. If you're in
yeah.
a coma and
Mm, she
your boss is annoyed because you're not responding.
she was emailing, and this was partly her own fault. Like, her husband was saying you shouldn't be doing this, but even when she was literally in labor, like minutes away from delivering her first child, she was emailing work and things like that. But that was partly her, but it was kind of the environment that was created and the expectation. Um, oh, anyway,
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, good book though. I
Mm.
recommend it.
Thank you.
Mm.
Now, just so we don't, I just picking up on a little comment from a half an hour ago. Julie said about self-determination theory, and this is another piece of theory for learning and teaching, and I guess it's kind of I'm quite intrigued by all of this sort of, there's so many different options and so many different truths, if that's the way to phrase it. It's hard to keep up with just society in general, but specifically for learning and teaching. And so it is interesting how it's a swing back, like even that book you were saying with the pomegranate or fig on the cover. It's a return to this visceral, sort of embodied sort of approaches because I think people are getting very, very sick of screens, maybe. And then it's kind of this overload and keeping up and the fatigue that comes with that. So it's interesting. It's sort of, I say as though I'm not a participant or something, but it's intriguing how it's kind of, you know, elements of the world are going to hell, and it's hard to keep up.
You should write a bookmark. I've got the template for you. The Way We Are.
Oh
Lessons from
yeah,
a
good.
Lifetime of Listening by
Well, I've got
Mark
a
Cherry.
yeah, I've got a template. Then I might even harness the power of AI to help me.
Oh, great. Just what the world needs.
Yeah, yeah.
Another mediocre
No, there's a lot. There's so many things
average.
to talk about. And then the fact that people don't, well, there's even people with reading books, oh, I don't have the time, or, it's this whole idea of taps into busyness as a virtue. And then it's like, yeah, but I don't know, like find yourself an apple tree and sit under it for the afternoon, you'll get through it. But then it's like, oh no, rush, rush. And I don't know. Don't want to kind of, uh, get too vague with my reflections. Well, I do like Julie's comment. Research showing that time spent in nature increases well-being, concentration, and engagement. We talked about that last month. One of Lottie's books was about down by the river or something like that. No, it was one of your books, Stephen.
No, oh, yeah, yeah. I
It
was
was
going to say
Mark's
one of,
book, The Natural Advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Matt's book, The Natural
Yeah,
I
I remember now.
Yep,
Yeah.
that was the one.
Lottie's book was the one written by a marmot or something. With awful wow. Anyway, Alicia, tell us some books.
I've been reading one of Lottie's books, actually. One of her suggestions, The Wild Robot, with the
Oh, okay.
kids.
Yes.
Thoroughly enjoying that, Stephen. You should get into it
A wild robot. Okay.
just before the movie comes out.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Okay. Hang on.
With the kids. That's been good.
Jim just yelled from the other room, I've read them, so I don't know what that contributes to the discussion, but anyway. Huh?
Great.
Jim says they're good. Sorry to cut you
Yeah,
off.
yeah. I sped through, yeah, that's the one. I sped through Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Oh, I've read that. Someone bought it for me.
Yeah, about a month ago because I got a spare ticket to go and see her speak, which was great. I had read like Eat, Pray, Love like years ago, but I didn't read it again. I just watched the movie just to remind myself. But I quite enjoyed Big Magic.
She's got a podcast on Big Magic.
Yes, she does have a podcast on Big Magic. And it is quite good.
And how
And
was she in person?
she was fantastic, amazing, absolutely amazing.
How do they translate that into an event? Like, because if that's not too big a question, I guess I'm fascinated with you. She's got a book, she's got previous books, then she's got an
But
audience.
she was, yeah, but she was ultimately coming out to advertise a new book.
Yeah, okay. So it's like a promo style, but taps into ideas within the book. So it's not a sit-down workshop.
No. She just stood
Yeah,
up and talked for an hour flat out and she just told stories. But ultimately,
yeah.
that's all of her book is just stories. So she spent just an hour telling different stories. It was great. And then she answered some questions. But yes, it was literally she had an intro, but then she talked. But most of the time, it is just authors just telling stories from their travels and writing adventures and stuff. It was great.
Can you tell us
Um,
one of the
oh,
vignettes that you recall? What one kept with you as you drove home or
Oh God, what did she talk about? She talked a little bit about, having addiction and, talking about 12 steps and sex addiction. So she went really personal because she asked a really personal question by somebody in the audience and everyone kind of thought it was a bit of a joke, but she kind of just got them and went on to a real deep story about,
right.
12 steps and going to NA meetings and all this stuff. It was quite, I imagine she talks about it with everyone, but it was quite special. Yeah. And,
very
very sharing,
different?
but, that's what she does. I mean, she pours her heart out in these books. And of course, she was advertising her new book. which will be
Mm.
coming out at some point soon as well.
and is available for purchase.
Yes, funny that, of course. So no, that was probably that was a good highlight.
I think the one Jem reported was she said one day I was just walking and I don't like people on ladders or something, and so she
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
spent
She did
40
spot
minutes
on. Yes,
holding
yes,
someone's
yes. Oh,
ladder,
yes.
and
Jem,
then
you're
she
right.
said,
Yes.
and the
That was
person
good
up
on
the
her.
ladder didn't even know I was there, and then I just left. And she said maybe my purpose was to hold the
Yeah, that was
ladder.
actually, it was
But
quite funny. That was, yeah, yeah, that was a great story, actually. Exactly that.
that kind of thing, Mark, real touchy feely. Everything's
Yeah.
I
everything,
have
man.
read the book and
Mark's
listened to the
eaten,
podcast.
prayed, and loved. Did you read that one?
No, no, I've sort of I haven't yet. It's not in on my list or anything. It's
Mm.
kind, but I am interested in the phenomenon of it. Why all those eyeballs went and read that book and then the movie, and then it seemed to get a bit of a backlash or
Yes, she did as well. Yeah, she talked
What was
about
the
all of that.
backlash?
Yeah, yeah.
Because she's
And she got,
white, or
yeah, 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 yeah. And she's, she talks quite a little bit about being cancelled, and
yeah.
then she turned into talking about creativity and stuff. But, she talked about the fact that she reinvents herself with every book to some extent as well. It was fascinating.
what did she get cancelled for? What did she do wrong?
Oh, no, she had a manuscript about to come out about a book about Ukrainians. And yeah, that was like the book before, and a Ukrainian read it and was just like, no, you can't publish this
Mm.
right at the last minute. And she was like, oh,
Mm. Mm.
yeah. So, yes. And it took her like a year or two to reset after that and rewrite another book. And then, yeah.
Mm. But yeah, it sounds like a good career. It's like, oh no, something terrible's happening. Oh, this is going to be absolutely grist for the mill. It's like, I can't
She
publish
did. She
it.
talked about,
Oh no.
Well, humans have they're attracted to drama or they're kind of what's happening just as
Mm.
a thing.
I've got a child screaming. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to love you and leave you. It has been
Okay,
fab.
thank you.
Oh, great.
Nice to
We should
chat
probably
with
wrap
you.
up anyway.
Always fab to chat.
Mm.
I'm going to
Great.
remove that spotlight. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. I did have a second book I was going to talk through, but I might hold that one over till next time. Is
Mm.
there anything else? Is there anything else you need to tell us, Stephen? I saw a few other. I saw a book in your list that I think I have read. I
Mm.
think it might have been the one about the woman that speaks about emotions. Um, she's
Oh,
from
yeah, Brene
Dallas.
Brown. Mm.
Yeah, I saw
Well,
that.
she's very, a little bit more research heavy, but
Yeah,
she's a bit of an Elizabeth Gilbert, like they'd kind of,
yeah.
they could co-present almost.
Is there a genre? How do you describe that territory?
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of, yeah, self-help, but with a deeply personal, you don't just say, look, Mark, what you need to do is eat 3 square meals a day. You then say, and this one time I ate chocolate for a whole day and I went to the toilet a lot. And then people go, "Oh, okay, that's more memorable than the first bit. So it's
Yeah,
all,
it's that narrative, like a little narrative within the message or something.
but it's, yeah, seems to work better when it's self-flagellating. And you got to balance it just right. You can't be showing off and pretending that you're doing the right thing. Sometimes you got to say, oh, and I did this and it was just not good.
Well, it
You
is
know?
that era. That's why I'm really fascinated because if you look at, say, there were a lot of books published sort of in the kind of late 1800s and early 1900s, like kind of huckster, get rich quick type of pop
Hmm.
psychology. And then you think, oh, isn't that interesting? That's sort of like that, what was going on in
Hmm.
the world. And then these books bubbled up naturally and people bought
Hmm.
them. And then some of them are still in print. And then, but
Hmm.
meanwhile, fast forward 150 years or something, and then you get this phenomenon of,
Hmm.
um, this
Yeah,
sort of,
from Tony Robbins to Brene Brown and Elizabeth Gilbert, like that's, from hyper masculine, I jump on a trampoline before I go talk and everything's sell, money, whatever. Now it's more like, oh, you know, I held a ladder for 40 minutes and then I felt bad about myself, and I went home and had a cup of tea. Like it's much more grounded and human, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
It's
I guess
I
it's
would say it's better. Like if you were thinking, what would you want people growing up on? It'd be Elizabeth Gilbert over Tony Robbins, wouldn't it? You'd hope.
well, the world is an interesting place with different audiences, and you can't always predict what other people are going to be interested in.
No, well, I mean, yeah, having said that, Tony Robbins hasn't gone away. I'm sure he's still pumping out books.
Hmm.
It's easier to say that was then and this is now, but he's still got a career, still doing his shtick, as it were.
Yeah, I guess if anything, it's kind of this whole idea of globalized audiences has sort of become even more, and it's instant as well. You can look up people, you can scrutinize who they are. They've all got a backstory of. I started listening to a book about the guy. Do you know what a dot journal is, Stephen? A dot.
Yeah, I'm vaguely familiar. Yeah.
It was I started listening to this book about how to use a dot journal, and
Mm,
then I click, 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 and there's this whole backstory of the guy. So it's kind of what you're saying. It's like instead of tell us how it works and leave it at that, but no, it has to have that human context of this is what happened to me, and this sort of
mm,
like grounding it in a human story. And it's like, oh, it's a bit kind of unexpected, this sort of
mm.
element. But
Well,
uh,
even you think, your internet recipe as well. Like, it's not just here's how to make coleslaw. It's like, and, partly that's
oh yeah, yeah,
search engine optimization. You got to have all the words, so you don't just say use corn flour. You say use corn flour or cornstarch or cornmeal or corn
you
whatever.
wouldn't
But
use,
yeah,
you
but it
can't
also comes
substitute
with a
cornmeal for corn flour. No.
no, I know. I'm aware of that, Mark. I'm just saying that's the method that they're using. But also, as a result of that, they're using this big long story.
Yeah,
Here's
the
when my dog
story.
was sick, and my grandma and my
Yeah.
nonna and my nonno used to do this and do that. And anyway, here's the coleslaw at the end. Like it's sort of it's a whole production.
Yeah. Well, some people
Hmm.
like that, I guess. And then you can see, click here for just the recipe, or you got
Hmm.
to email them for the recipe, or you got to be on
Hmm.
the mailing list, all this kind of thing. Anyway, I think we've kind of have it. We're in our last few minutes of evaporating time. Do you have any final thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention, as a result of reading Babel, which is set in Oxford, and the author's done a whole bunch of, research, kind of similar to your background. There's a person on TikTok, and all they do is they go and study in a different library in Oxford every day. So it's kind of
Oh,
like they give you a bit of a tour of the library, and here's the, it's more modern today, or this is the one that was in Harry Potter, or whatever.
just to
And
get
then
the
it's
vibe, or the vibe. Do they document their experience? Oh, well, they must.
Yeah, it's sort of like, here's the library, and then it's like here's the place that I chose and why I chose it, and then you get a bit of a kind of, get a bit of a sped up them typing and writing and making faces. I don't really know why that bit's in there, but they say, and I studied this and I wrote this and I had a breakthrough in my writing or whatever. I was like, huh, whatever part of the world is listening to me to deliver me, you know, out of body visceral experiences of studying in a nice library. I was like, this is the
Well,
content I'm into.
you
Maybe
know,
you'd be into it too, Mark.
my suggestion is you stop watching those TikTok videos and you take a note when you're next time in your teacher
Hmm,
professional development moment that
hmm,
you said you had attended.
hmm.
You can live the dream. The dream is yours.
Well, that's what I'm starting to realize, Mark. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of, having just rounding out my 2 years at the University of Melbourne. We've spent most of our time in a fluorescent lit little cube, and there's all these lovely gardens and buildings and ancient. So that's what I'm saying. I'm doing my best to, instead of sit at this desk, take my books, take my papers, take my things, and go into the real world, Mark.
Yeah.
Just to live
Well,
it up.
the real world of a library,
Hmm.
especially it
Not
sounds,
that real. It's a sheltered world, but still.
yeah, like I have a romantic notion of, Stephen with his book and an apple in search of a tree or something, and where's Stephen? People will be looking. Oh, he's reading, and under a tree, or in
Mm.
he's in his little nook. Don't disturb him.
And then they'll look closer and I'm shooting a time lapse to upload to my,
Yeah.
social media channel. Here's me reading in a spot. Whatever. Anyway.
I think that we are out of time.
Mm.
So hopefully, Lottie, if you're watching this recording, a big hello. I hope you, are back on board for us, joining us next month
Mm.
for our event. But thank you for those people that joined us. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Alicia. And thank you, Stephen.
Well, thank you,
So
Mark.
I think that's about it.
Mm.
So
All right. Here.
have a good month, and we'll see you next time.
See you.
See ya.